Turn your living room into a joyful, hands-free playroom with CoComelon Sing and Play with JJ. Your child sings, moves, and learns right alongside JJ and friends, all on the big screen. It's designed thoughtfully to spark speech, rhythm, and coordination through songs and active play. Try an ad-free, safe, and interactive way to make screen time part of their learning and growth. Parents love how easy it is, voice-controlled and frustration-free. Kids love every moment of singing, laughing, and playing along. It's fun for them, and it's feel-good for you. Available now in the Volley app on your smart TV. Just search Volley in your TV's app store and start your free trial of CoComelon Sing and Play with JJ today. That's CoComelon Sing and Play with JJ, available now in the Volley app on your smart TV. Search Volley and start your free trial today.
Volley. Welcome to Homeschooling Outside the Box, the podcast that encourages and equips moms who homeschool an outside-the-box child. Hey there, I'm Cindy Renna, and this is episode 13. I am so excited. This is my very first episode featuring a guest. I have got Kristin Rosin here today. Kristin, say hi.
Hi, how are you guys?
And Kristin is a very dear friend of mine. She is going to talk to us a little bit about Charlotte Mason. We met over the summer recently. She's another homeschool mom, and she's also another transplant. You guys know I moved from Michigan to Alabama, and then you just moved.
We moved from Colorado to Alabama, and so met at the park.
Yep, and it was about the same time, wasn't it? In the spring. Mm-hmm. So you guys, of course, we had like 9 years previous experience living here, but you moved, you said, from Colorado?
We moved from Colorado. I had no idea what the South was like, so this has been a really fun experience, getting to know the different quirks.
No snow.
No snow,
yeah.
lots of fire ants and poison ivy and different things, but lots of good things as well.
Definitely. Okay, now can you tell us a little bit about your family? Obviously, you homeschool, so
yes,
tell us some more.
My husband and I have been married for 12 years now. We have 3 boys. My oldest is 7, and then we have a 5-year-old and an almost 2-year-old. So we just started homeschooling about, I guess, a year and a half ago or so. So we're just getting started in this journey, this fun journey.
That's awesome. Another boy mom, that is my favorite. Because we understand each other, definitely. Yes. Okay, so tell us a little bit about how you were introduced to Charlotte Mason.
Charlotte Mason. I first heard of Charlotte Mason the summer before I got my first teaching job. I was handed the book When Children Love to Learn, and it's by a couple different authors, Susan Schaefer Macaulay, she writes, and a couple other people. But and I was just told, we're switching to a new philosophy this year in our lower elementary classrooms, and this is the philosophy you're going to be following. So read up, and it's going to be fun. And so I was like, okay, let's see what this is about. And it was just really fun reading that book the first time because it was so different from what I had heard in teaching college. And her philosophy was just very foreign, hearing words like narration and living books. And we had a lot of teacher trainings. And I guess I should say that the school I was going to work at was a classical charter school, but they were going to transition their 1st and 2nd and 3rd grade classrooms to a Charlotte Mason approach. So it was a good experience that summer.
So that's awesome. It's rare. I don't think I've ever heard of somebody finding out about Charlotte Mason through professional experience. Usually you hear about moms finding out through homeschool moms. So that's really neat. And that's exactly what I want to talk to Kristin about today, is how that shaped her homeschool now and kind of giving us a behind the scenes look. I know you weren't technically a part of a parents union school or trained in Charlotte Mason, but I love the idea that you were at a classical school, which is interesting in itself. So you were traditionally trained, like you just went to college to become a teacher, but then found a job at a classical school that then took on Charlotte Mason's approach. So wow. Okay. So let's stay there for a second. So how much did you feel ready to do all that? Like, how many paradigms had to shift for you?
Well, it was just really interesting because my mom was a teacher my entire life. And so I had always wanted to be in the education field, just seeing her. And I had worked in a couple of schools beforehand. But when I was in teaching school, I had just heard from all of my professors over and over about how hard teaching was and how you're lucky if you don't burn out the first 2 years. And, you'll have an overcrowded classroom and lots of grading and all these different things just seemed so negative. And in my mind, I just kept thinking, I don't want that experience. It shouldn't be this way. And I didn't believe in my heart that teaching as a profession had to be hard because we're there for the children. We're educating them and we're having relationships with them. I just wanted something different. So I had a friend that I was going to school with, and she actually worked at this school. So I was able to go into her classroom and see how she was with her students. And I kind of understood the philosophy of that school. And then I just kept hearing Charlotte Mason's name dropped here and there. And a bunch of those teachers went down to Ambleside School in Texas. And they just came back with all these great ideas. And I just thought, I really want to be a part of this. And so God just worked it out. There was a spot open on their team, and it was able to be a really good experience.
That is so fun. That's such a cool story. Okay. Well, let's talk about, obviously you're a mother, okay? Mm-hmm. And you had, when you were in the Charlotte Mason school, you talked a little bit about that, how it was refreshing, but can you tell more about your experience in terms of, seeing her philosophy in action in a classroom setting?
Mm-hmm. Yes. So I taught second grade, and we had very small class sizes for a Colorado school, I guess. I had 16 in my class. And so it was just a really wonderful time that I had to just spend with these kids and just get to know them and their personalities. And, it was just really fun. I found myself shopping at thrift stores looking for works of art to hang on the wall and rocking chairs, make a cozy reading corner for us, and picking out music for the composers that we were going to study, and looking for living books on westward expansion and the Civil War. And so it was just very different from what I thought I would have. We were told no bulletin boards, just hang,
I love that.
hang up a timeline of the people that we would study.
Yes.
And it was just, a lot of nature study in the classroom, and the students would bring in specimens that they found, or I would bring things in that I found on a walk, and just trying to pull in those key pieces of her philosophy, short lessons, focusing on developing attentiveness, and just different things like that. We just had a nice experience together in the classroom. So,
that's awesome. So did you go out? Did you go on nature walks?
We tried to. We were in there wasn't too much to see. We were kind of on the prairie in Colorado, so kind of not that much, but we did as much as we could. And then we kind of, thought of, okay, well, we'll look at an aspen leaf in the spring, and then we had a green one from the summer, and then we would look at it again in the fall to see how it had changed,
right.
Bird feathers and different things that we could think about, we would bring in. So
that's awesome. And then what about short lessons? You think of being in a classroom and that bell ringing every, whatever it was, 45 minutes.
Yes.
And then your late bell ringing, and you're, and just that. And I know you were in the younger grades, but still, how was that different in terms of, were you watching the clock? Was it a more delightful experience where you could really dig into a subject, or were you pretty good about staying, okay, it's been 15 minutes, let's transition?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was an interesting dynamic because we, did fall under the district. I had certain things that I had to teach. I had my math curriculum we had to go through. We had our language arts, but it was, starting the day with life music, as we called it, having some poetry read aloud, and then moving into our language arts, and then going in, reading a wonderful chapter book together, and just trying to have a fluid motion throughout the day that we would follow. And, as soon as I started to see their attention wander in the lesson and move on to something new, just kind of looking at the students and what they needed and going from there.
Engaging. And that's because 16 kids, that is a great class size.
Yes.
But of course, that's larger than a homeschool.
Yes, much larger than homeschool.
Unless, I'm sure there's somebody.
For a public school
right,
classroom.
exactly.
Yes.
So you still, and this leads me to my next question about outside the box kids. So I'm sure you had kids at different levels who needed different things. And there is that classroom management element to it where you had to sort of cater to all. The Charlotte Mason method tells you to cater to all of them, where a lot of times other philosophies you hear, you're just teaching to the middle. And so in this, how did you, I don't want to say deal with, that sounds harsh. How did you provide for the children who might have been a little outside the box, might have had some different needs, weren't catching on as quickly? How did that work in the setting?
I think it just comes back to one of the main components of a Charlotte Mason philosophy, and thinking that, or understanding that each child that you have is a person in and of themselves, completed, whole, ready to live their life with these ideas, and they already have this natural curiosity they're bringing to the classroom. So whether they were out of the box or, whatever they were, it was just understanding each student that I had in my class and meeting them where they were at and not where I wish they would be, not treating them as a problem, but as a blessing. And I feel like in a Charlotte Mason education, it gives the students a voice. They're asked to narrate and tell me what they think and why they think this way. And so when they have this voice in the classroom, I feel like it just brings their little hearts right to you. And they want to be your friend. They want to interact with the other students, and they want to be a part of everything. And so just by remembering just the simple little things, just every day walking into the room and just thinking, how can I bless my students? How can I let them feel that they are contributing to the class and they're not just a problem and we're waiting for them to go to their therapy or whatever it is,
Exactly. Because that's right, about giving them a voice. I love that, because that is the main theme, I think, of Charlotte Mason, or a big one at least, is that right, a child is a person. They're already born persons. What you have to say is valuable. And I think when you're teaching the student, not as married to the curriculum, there's more room for that.
Yes.
So what did you say? You were telling me earlier, you called them
we called them our sparklers. They just shined a little brighter than everybody else.
That is so true.
But they're such a joy. And those students were often my biggest cheerleaders in the classroom, the first to give you a hug in the morning, excited to show you anything they did the night before. And they just, I feel like a Charlotte Mason philosophy, though, at least what I saw in my experience, that it helped these students to just know themselves a little better. They just realized that, hey, I can narrate. I may not do an oral narration, but I can act something out for the class, or I can draw this beautiful picture of what we read about in Little House in the Big Woods. Like, they just had all these different things they could bring to the table. And then the other students would often be very surprised and thankful about these beautiful things that they brought. And, there definitely were behavioral issues and, communicating with the parents that, this is a different kind of classroom than your student has been in before, but we're going to come along beside them and help them, focus on their strengths and also build their weaknesses and just kind of work together through this. And so, but just also another piece to it was just that masterly inactivity. And when I would notice a student's attention start to wander, just gently putting my hand on their shoulder or letting them sit closer to my desk or the front or something, and just giving more eye contact throughout the day, just different things that you can do to keep them engaged and excited about what we're learning.
Yeah, absolutely. And so did you do any habits in that? Did you guys include habits?
We talked about habits. We did a lot of not character lessons, because it's all through living books. Sure. But, we would just ask those open-ended questions, and it was just, we talked a lot about the habit of attention, because that's like the first thing, that you must learn.
Especially with second graders.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we talked a lot about her motto, I am, I can, I ought, I will. That was posted.
Did you guys say it?
We didn't focus on it too much, because I think it needs to be more of a background idea, if you will. Not a background idea, but just kind of an overarching theme in the classroom. But we talked a lot about our shoulds and how our shoulds should be completed first, and then we can do the things we want to do.
Nice.
Let's finish our work, and then we'll have time for a read aloud or whatever it is. But we talked a lot about that.
That's awesome. Okay, so then you left. Talk to me about the transition to homeschool. So how you were at the school for how many years?
2.5 years.
Okay, and then you left but did not immediately start homeschooling.
No, we spent a couple years having babies and growing them and figuring out what we were doing as parents. I think the transition into motherhood was the hardest transition of my life, honestly.
Yes.
It was, there's so many insecurities and mom guilt, and it's all a blessing, of course, but all these other things that came with it, I was not expecting.
Well, I think for me, like, I was shocked, and I heard it said, and I thought, man, this is the perfect explanation of motherhood. Motherhood is the true exfoliator.
Oh, yes.
And all of I had no idea how selfish I was.
Yes. Oh, my goodness.
Until I had, and of course we had, the twins are 1 minute
Which
apart.
Is amazing.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then Owen is only 16 months younger. So, we were, everybody was babies, and then everybody was a toddler, and everybody was preschool. I don't know if you've heard this expression yet down here in the weeds. That is, we were in the weeds.
Yes.
For sure.
We were in the poison ivy.
Yes. So that transition, you're right, because I think it teaches you a lot about yourself too. Like, I was a great mom before I had kids. I knew everything, and
you know when bedtime
exactly.
Yeah.
So the growing experience, that definitely takes time.
Yes.
So obviously you had no children when you were teaching.
No.
Okay, so then you waited until 6 or 7 to start. When did you start homeschooling?
We started, my oldest, he has a summer birthday, so we waited till after he was age 6, and so we started, when he was 6. So
in the 6-year gap, you still had Charlotte Mason's philosophies in your head.
Mm-hmm. But it was just, I don't think it had made it quite to my heart yet for my own family. I had all these things that happened to me when I was teaching, and I had a wonderful experience to look back on, but it was still kind of left in the classroom. I had my books and I had things that I brought home, but you just get so caught up in child rearing and childbirth and potty training. And, we still read a lot of living books. Of course, you can't, once you read a good book, you can't ever go back to.
True.
Can we say twaddle?
Right. Yeah.
You can't go back.
I definitely say twaddle.
Yes. We read books all the time. And so I think because of that, and just knowing kind of what I knew school could look like, because we weren't always going to homeschool. That wasn't our plan.
Right.
Because I did have this great experience at the school, so I thought, I could put my kids in here and this would be okay.
Yeah.
But just as time went on, and seeing that we have boys who are very, not wild, but they're just energetic, and they're boys. They're boys. I just couldn't bear to put them in a classroom all day. And there's so many reasons to homeschool. I'm not saying that has to be the main one, but it became apparent after a while that this was going to be the path that we were going to take. And so immediately I'm just like, okay, we'll just do Charlotte Mason, just snap your fingers and it's done. But along the way, I got very sidetracked by all these, different, philosophies, doing the letter of the week, and,
we did letter of the week.
Yes. And now looking back, I just asked myself, why did you do that? You should have just relaxed and just enjoyed those early years.
Right. Don't you feel like you need to be, I know for me, and of course we did the traditional, Benjamin was diagnosed with autism when he was 3. So, we were told like, oh yeah, you need to put him in this school program, and this is kind of going to be the thing.
There's a lot of pressure.
There's so much pressure when you have an outside the box child. There's really this, I don't want to, indirect vibe. I don't know what to call it.
Judgment.
Saying like, no, you need to let the experts handle this.
Right.
Don't almost that I wouldn't be able to do. Yes.
Yeah.
So he was in the school system. We did private preschool for the others. So we kind of did a lot of different things before we got to homeschooling. Right. We did not ever plan on homeschooling. And then for us, it just became apparent that our experience with school was not working.
Right. Right.
so then we were just gonna homeschool Ben, but then we just totally fell in love, and we even went back again and thought, are we sure? We're sure. We've definitely had a lot of different educational experiences, but it is overwhelming because even when you decide, okay, we're gonna homeschool, there are so many options out there.
It's very overwhelming.
I think you feel like, especially with your first one, you feel like you need to be doing something.
Yes.
And Charlotte Mason early years is so beautiful and natural that you just don't feel like you're doing anything because you're just doing life, and I can
it's
say
it's very natural.
Yes, with Gracie, we've totally done that. And I've not doubted it for a minute, but with the boys, I mean, I was trying to have them do continents and maps and just ridiculous.
Just you feel like you have to be doing
producing,
something, producing and having something to show, you're at home with your kids. What are you doing all day? This type of attitude.
It was like a justification, like, it was just, you're not very confident yet. So, okay. So then when did you end up kind of seeing, that book I read, that Charlotte Mason, let's get back to that. When did you make it back around to Charlotte Mason?
It's so interesting because we waited to start my oldest officially in school. A lot of my other friends were starting their kids a whole year before we were ready to start.
Wow.
And I had a couple mom friends who decided to homeschool, and they knew I was a teacher. So they were asking me like, what curriculum would you recommend? Do you have any ideas? Can you just give me some helpful advice? And I would always recommend Charlotte Mason to them, and I would pass out my book. I know everything, but I would pass out my book, When Children Love to Learn. And, if you look at it now, there's all these tabs and highlights and all this stuff, and I'd be like, just take this and read it and you'll be fine. And they did. They all did Charlotte Mason. And so they would come to me and be like, oh, we're just loving this, and we're reading these good books, and we're loving this slow atmosphere in our home. And I was always so happy for them, and I was like, that will be us too, for sure. But it wasn't like, until you go through something yourself and figure out what works for your kids and all of that. It's all a learning experience.
It is.
So, but that's how we got there. It was just me recommending her philosophy. And then eventually after I saw everybody else do it, we're like, okay, now it's our turn, So
that's awesome. All right. So what would you say are the biggest, I'm always curious about this, because you read Charlotte Mason's volumes. And if you haven't, you should. Just little.
I'm working my way through. They're good.
Yes, they are so good. And volume 6, if you want like the cliff, well, you can't call it Cliff's Notes because it's not that at all. But it's sort of her, her most comprehensive. It's it's the last one. She's at the end of her life. This is, if she's got something to say, she's gonna say it in this volume. But that gives you, I would say, a really good overview.
It does.
But the first book, Home Education, is for kids up to like age 9.
It is the early years.
Yeah.
It's a really good, she gives very practical advice on what to do, during those years, and things you can do that you feel like you are educating your children. But it is in that natural, home-based way. It doesn't feel like a checklist of things that you have to go through. So.
Exactly. Yeah. So definitely. I mean, but my point is when I'm reading the volumes, I'm always thinking, yes, Charlotte, I know.
Right.
But you didn't have to go flip laundry, or you didn't have.
They had maids. And cooks
right. I got, I was in a really bad place for a while. We were reading so much British lit. Like,
oh my goodness.
And, you read Peter Pan and Mary Poppins and Alice in Wonderland. And at the end of all this, you're like, yes, if I had a nanny and a cook.
Right.
And a house. I mean, this would be fantastic.
Then we could be outside for 6 hours a day.
Exactly. And so I love her work. But at the same time, I think it's necessary for, 21st century women to filter through, things are different.
Right.
And so we don't have to, I don't know. That's my question to you is, what did you find yourself having to tweak in her, because the philosophy works across the board. Like the 20 principles are they're principles. So they're going to last forever. Right. They're going to make sense. But some of, I guess I would say, like the delivery of some of the principles might have to be tweaked, moving from a classroom setting to a home setting. So what would you say about her method or philosophy that you kind of tweaked when you made that shift?
I think for us, we just have a much slower pace in our home, still having a toddler there and trying to get all the things done. It's impossible for me, at least the place that I'm in. It's just very challenging to do all these things. So
that toddler season of life is I remember, even when I had Gracie, I had a friend who the age was very similar between her kids. And I said, how's this going to be if we have another baby, and she goes, oh, the first year is fine.
Yeah.
It's when they
The
can
newborn,
move.
right.
Yeah, newborn, you'll have
It's
no
piece of cake.
problem.
They sleep. It's fine.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I baby wore. So, I mean, she was just like an entity of me.
Yes.
You know, I mean, we were just one
Exactly.
body for a year.
Yes.
But, right, once they can move, that's really
You're
a
waging
challenge.
war all the time.
Yes. Or
So-
putting out fires and that, right.
Yes.
And then still having to reach the older ones
Right.
and give them what they need. But
Yeah. It just feels like a lot sometimes. Her philosophy is wonderful and so life-giving, but at the same time, I feel like just as a mom, sometimes there's just a lot she expected from us. You know, not only are you in charge of your home, the domain, and the meals, you're also educating your children. You must be educating yourself.
Absolutely.
And, you know,
Yeah.
when you go through those baby years and toddlerhood, sometimes honestly, I'm just so tired at the end of the day. I just go straight to sleep. I don't have time for these mother culture things that we hear about. So
Yes.
Sometimes for me, it's just keeping it very simple. You know, we'll do our picture study, and we'll, you know, read our poetry, and we'll have a chapter book, and just these short things every day that we can get to. But it probably isn't as much as she would recommend for our phase of life. You know, we kind of just do what we can at this point and leave it. You know, we're very comfortable with our slow pace. Like, we keep in these riches of the Charlotte Mason education, but it's not as exhaustive as it could be. Just, this is the phase of life that we're in. I know as they'll get older and the baby gets older, we'll have more time and I'll have more mental energy, but sometimes it just feels like a lot.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And that, I mean, and that's the great thing about principles, though, is I feel like you can still hang on to the principles without sacrificing, or you don't have to sacrifice the principles when you adjust their delivery.
Right. And also in the early years, you know, we're in that with, you know, my two youngest, my oldest is still young. It's a lot of habit formation.
Sure.
So a lot of, you know, let's practice this and practice that, and let's practice being respectful, you know, all these different things that we're working through. And that's another transition. You know, in the classroom, I had 16 students for however many hours a day. Then they went home to do all these things with their parents, and I didn't have to focus on their life. You know, like it was an educational life in the classroom, but it's just vastly different being a parent versus a teacher.
Sure.
So, you know, I see my kids on their worst days, and I see them on their absolute worst days. And
Yeah.
they, you know, we know our kids give us, they are different with us than with anybody else. You know, my kid went to church the other day, and they had a different teacher that week, but they went over the same lesson they had gone over the past 3 weeks. And I asked him, hey, did you let her know that you guys had already learned that? And he's like, Mom, no, I did not want to be rude.
You would have let me know?
And I'm thinking, well, anytime we try to do, you know, any review in math, you tell me very clearly that you know how to do this, and you're not going to go over this again. You know, it's just very different with your own kids. So
it is. And part of that is so comforting, because I love to be the safe harbor where your kids can be at their worst. You know, I remember when the boys were all so young, I would just think, I'm like, what a nice compliment that you all feel so comfortable in this home that you can just be absolute messes. But home is the place you fall apart. And so we do deal with a lot of those messes. And so that is actually my next question, is transitioning from the teacher to the parent teacher, which I do think, especially book one, is really good about that. Charlotte Mason is very proactive about putting responsibility. Gifting parents with that responsibility. Yes, exactly. So how did that change in terms of your teaching? How do you teach your kids differently than you taught? I guess is the question.
I feel like this is terrible to say, but I feel like on some days I was a better teacher in the classroom, you know, because you walk in and you're on, and you're able to just, you know, mesh with your students. You have a relationship with all of them. You just kind of go in and you do it. Whereas in the home, it's just very real life all the time. Yes. And so, you know, if your student they don't want to do school that day, they'd rather build Legos or build a fort or go play in the rain.
Sure.
You know, it's really a challenge sometimes finding that balance between when, okay, no, it is time to sit down. Let's have some time together. Let's have some, you know, whatever it is, versus letting them go and be wild and free or whatever they want to do. So just we've just really I've had to be more consistent with setting a schedule sometimes, or some type of rhythm that we follow throughout the day, so that everybody's on the same page.
Sure.
And we know what to expect. And we do a lot of our reading while we eat. We have breakfast, lunch books. And
I feel like that's a boy. Moms
Yes.
of boys, this is when you read.
when they're eating and still, and their mouths are quiet.
I found that out when the boys were toddlers. I was like, ooh, we're all here anyway.
Yes.
You're shoving food in your mouth.
Let's
now
read.
let's read.
Yes.
And that's still when we do our reading.
Yes.
And they're almost 12.
Yeah.
So you would say that's the biggest transition, though.
There have been a couple challenges moving into this, homeschool mom versus teacher life that I'm in right now. One thing that I was thinking about the other day is that when you're teaching, sometimes the principal will walk into the room and kind of just peek in just to see what's going on. And, it's fine, but your anxiety can't help but rise just a little bit, like, oh, am I doing everything right? But I feel like now I'm the principal, always watching myself all the time, constantly assessing, how did that go? Maybe I should do something different next time. So just having to quiet that principal voice in my head and just relax and just enjoy this time with my kids. That's been, a huge challenge for me, not second guessing myself and what we're doing. And, another part of it too, when you are in the classroom, they give you your curriculum and they say, this is what math you're going to use. This is what you have for language arts.
Right.
Here's, your subjects. And you kind of just walk that out under this philosophy. Whereas now as a homeschool parent, there's, like we talked about before, so many resources.
Oh, yes.
It's so overwhelming. And we've talked about too, how, we'll use Ambleside Online, and then I'll also pull from, this history curriculum and all these different resources that are out there. So it's hard sometimes to just take a chill pill and just relax and, just do a couple of good things instead of trying to do everything all at once.
Exactly.
If that makes sense.
That is exactly what it is, because you're not wanting to do everything for bad reasons. I mean, it's all so good.
There's so many riches out there.
So you want all of them. But I mean, that is definitely a big part of her philosophy throughout, is to just pick. They'd take 2 years to read one book. And just reading, it's always better to read long and deep.
Right. And really get to know that author in the time period. Yes.
And they're getting so much more out of it, where I'm very much a checklist person. I feel like, oh, look, we got through all of these books. But
what do they remember and what did they love? And there needs to be time to let them have those reflective thoughts and let it to sink deeper. But we do feel like, oh, we need to read this amount of books this year, or this amount of, poetry, poems they need to memorize. It's just, we have to quiet that principal voice in our head all the time.
Exactly.
And, just like on a more technical aspect too, just, when I was in the classroom and I had 16 kids, I just, one of our goals was let each child narrate at least once a day. And so now you're with one student and you're like, oh, we can narrate multiple times a day. Let's go, Exactly. And they're like, Mom, you were right here. You heard what happened. Do I really have to tell you again? It's just navigating that aspect of her philosophy, like how much is too much narration, or how much, when to pull back, and just...
And what's more valuable to narrate? Because you do think about that. Well, and of course, I've got 3 who are school age. So one, we'll read Bible and, okay, well, you can narrate this. And then history, you can narrate this. But I know they're all getting something out of it because they're listening to their brother's narration. And then oftentimes they'll jump in.
Actually,
especially one child.
Yes.
We've got one particular child who... this is his strength, sketching every minute error that was made in the narration. So that is a very small classroom. It's 3 kids. It'll be 4 next year. Yeah. But
in
compared to 16.
In Charlotte's classrooms, I'm not sure how many students they had.
I don't know.
But how often did they narrate through the day? Like just these different things to think about in the home setting versus how it looked in the classroom.
Exactly, because her thing, it was the spontaneity. You didn't know when you were going to get called on to narrate, so you're always paying attention just in case you got called. But if you're home and even with my system of kind of rotating, by that third one, like the other 2 know they're not going to get called. So, it doesn't work quite the same.
Right. So, yeah, definitely. We do a lot of written narrations or they'll tell me and I'll write down what they say. But it is difficult sometimes figuring out how much and
Right. So you're not
aspect.
drilling them.
Right. Yes.
Right.
So.
Okay. Well, okay. So any other thoughts on moving from teacher to parent teacher, or did you find that there was anything that you miss from being in a classroom that you're not getting to do, or vice versa? Is there anything that's like better or more enjoyable in the home?
Well, in the classroom, I do miss it a lot. I loved being a teacher. And I think it's easier in the classroom sometimes because I don't have my laundry staring at me.
Yeah.
I don't have to worry about making lunch. The students have lunch packed and ready to go. So that aspect of it, like taking the mom part away, was easier in the classroom.
Right.
But, in the home, it's just coming to, the point where I do everything to glorify God. I'm just here serving my family.
Sure.
This is the phase of life I'm in, and bringing my kids with me, and we all fold laundry together, and they're helping to make breakfast, and just helping them to have these good, helpful habits now that they can grow into as they get older.
Exactly.
So, it's just being in a relationship with my kids and help living this life with them, as difficult as it can be. It's a blessing.
Definitely. Definitely. Okay. So if you had one takeaway for listeners, because a lot of times, you'll listen to a podcast and think, oh, that's good. Oh, that's a good idea. Oh, that's good. And then you have all these great ideas and you want to make all these changes. So what would be your one thing? What's your message in a sentence, so to speak?
Okay, so I have a quote from When Children Love to Learn.
Okay.
And I read this all those years ago, and I think I'll just read the quote. It says, this is by Susan Schaefer Macaulay.
Okay.
She wrote For the Children's Sake. She's also
yeah.
wrote this book. She says that Charlotte Mason's educational ideal was not to remove us from the ordinary, but to enrich us, each one, with the best possible relationships with God, with people in our family and community, with others through their books, art, or music, and with God's creation. So that quote has kind of just always stuck with me and has gone deeper as the years have gone by.
Yes.
And so now with my own children, just having that reminder that I don't need to waste time being fearful or anxious about things that we're doing in our homeschool, but just to rest in this beautiful philosophy that we are able to walk out in our home, and just remember it is all about that relationship aspect and just building their relationships with my husband and I and our family, and then all these authors and artists that we'll get to study. So just remember that as we're going along.
That's awesome. I love it. So, Kristin, if somebody wants to find you online and see your homeschool in action, where would they find you?
I am bookishmom _ and you guys can follow along, see what books we're reading and what we like to do outside.
Awesome. And that's on Instagram,
yes.
You said?
Yep.
Perfect. Okay. Well, thank you so much for coming on. This was fun.
Thank you for having me. This was fun.
Good. All right. Well, that wraps up this episode of Homeschooling Outside the Box. Thank you so much for listening, and I will talk with you soon. Bye-bye.
Hi, I'm Chris Gethard, and I'm very excited to tell you about Beautiful Anonymous, a podcast where I talk to random people on the phone. I tweet out a phone number, thousands of people try to call, you talk to one of them, they stay anonymous, I can't hang up, that's all the rules. I never know what's going to happen. We get serious ones. I've talked with meth dealers on their way to prison. I've talked to people who survived mass shootings. Crazy funny ones. I talked to a guy with a goose laugh, somebody who dresses up as a pirate on the weekends. I never know what's going to happen. It's a great show. Subscribe today, Beautiful Anonymous.